Maya stood frozen at the edge of the training floor, the cold steel under her boots sending shivers up her spine as the other trainees exchanged smirks and whispered doubts. She felt the weight of their eyes like lead pressing down on her shoulders. And she wondered if she would ever find the strength to move beyond their judgment, and she sensed the air itself seemed to tighten around her, as if the hall had grown smaller. Just to trap her in fear, she took a hesitant step forward, her muscles tense and uncooperative, the first obstacle looming ahead. Like a giant waiting to strike, and she forced herself to focus on the motion of her body. Each step, a test of balance and courage, while her mind replayed every past failure, the instructors scolding her every misstep, and she realized that nothing in the past would prepare her for the moment that waited just beyond the next wall. The first drill began with a simulated ambush. Two of the trainees lunged with their training knives there. Movements faster than she anticipated, and she stumbled backward, almost losing her footing, but she caught herself at the last second. Her heart pounding in her ears, as if trying to escape, and she noticed Commander Rourke in the corner of the hall, watching with an intensity that made her feel both exposed and protected at the same time. Every time she raised her arms to block the strikes, the attackers adjusted faster than she could anticipate. Her muscles screamed in protest, and sweat stung her eyes, but she refused to fall to panic. She forced herself to react, focusing on the pattern of their movements, the rhythm of their steps, and she realized that the challenge was no longer about strength or skill. It was about surviving their relentless pressure, while the shadow of doubt in the corner of the room seemed to grow heavier with every passing second. Her partners pressed harder, pushing her toward the walls, using every tactic to unbalance her, testing not only her abilities, but her patience and resolve. And Maya felt the sting of humiliation burn deeper than the scrape of her uniform as she realized that everyone in the room expected her to break, and yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of determination refused to die, no matter how cruel the test became. And she noticed Commander Rourke's eyes flicked toward her, signaling a silent promise that this trial was not over. The next station was a high wall climb with simulated enemy fire below, and Maya approached it with trembling legs, her palms slick with sweat, and her mind racing to remember every instruction she had ever been given. She jumped for the first hold, missed, and felt her stomach lurch, but she caught the second grip, her body straining, and she realized with a jolt that the eyes of every trainee were fixed on her, watching for the moment she would fail, and she sensed that something far more significant than a simple drill was about to be revealed. Every obstacle she overcame was met with disbelief and murmured comments from the others, their confidence in her shattering with each precise movement she made. And though her body ached, her focus sharpened like a blade cutting through doubt. She felt the presence of Commander Rourke close, and the air seemed charged with anticipation, as if the hall itself waited to see what would emerge from the trainee everyone had dismissed. When she reached the balance beam over the simulated fire zone, her legs quivering, she felt the weight of the training rifle in her hands, her grip unsteady at first, and then steadying with every careful step. And she noticed the eyes of her peers widen in shock, and the faint nod from Commander Rourke told her that this moment was not just about completing a drill, but proving something far deeper than skill alone. Final hurdle was a crawl under simulated barbed wire with a target at the end. She moved low to the ground, her arms burning, her knees scraping the floor, and every breath she took felt like fire, but she forced herself to keep moving, ignoring the shouts and the mocking laughter of the other trainees. She felt the presence of Commander Rourke near her, guiding her silently, and she sensed that the moment she reached the end would decide everything. As she stretched for the last target, her fingers brushing the edge, she felt the sudden shift in the hall, the other trainees frozen in place, the lights flickering, and the echo of silence falling over the space. And Maya realized that the trial had transformed into something far more important than she could have imagined, and she braced herself for the instant when Commander Rourke would make the move that could change her life forever. Commander Blake Rourke stepped Forward from the shadows of the training hall, his presence commanding the air itself to tighten around Maya as the other trainees froze in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what was about to happen, and she felt a mixture of fear and anticipation surge through her veins like lightning ready to ignite. Without a word, he reached his holster, drew his service weapon with fluid precision, and held it out to Maya, her eyes widening at the weight of trust and responsibility he was placing in her hands, and she felt a sudden surge of power mingled with terror, knowing that this was no ordinary drill and that every eye in the hall was locked on her, waiting for the moment she would falter. Maya's fingers trembled as they closed around the weapon, the metal cool against her palm, and she realized for the first time that failure was no longer an option, not because of the instructors or her peers, but because she now held the symbol of confidence and belief that Commander Rourke had placed in her. And she took a deep, steadying breath, feeling the air crackle with tension around her. The drill was restarted with the same course, but this time Maya moved differently, each step calculated, each motion precise and deliberate, as if the weapon had become an extension of her body, and the other trainees could only watch in disbelief as the girl they had dismissed transformed before their eyes into someone capable of mastering even the most impossible challenges. And she sensed the shift in the atmosphere, as if the hall itself was holding its breath for what would come next. The first simulated opponent advanced, and Maya raised the weapon smoothly, directing her stance and timing every movement with precision. Her breathing controlled her focus absolute, and she saw the flicker of surprise in the trainees watching her every action, and she realized that no one had ever seen a transformation like this under such pressure, and she felt the surge of determination climb higher as she prepared for the next obstacle. Crawling under the barbed wire, she moved like a shadow, her hands gripping the weapon firmly, her knees scraping the cold floor, and every step was met with unseen resistance, as if the hall itself was testing her resolve. And she sensed Commander Rourke moving just behind her, a silent guardian whose eyes never left her, waiting for the exact instant to intervene if necessary. And she realized that she was no longer afraid of failure, but of leaving potential untapped. The balance beam came next, and Maya stepped onto it, her legs steady, her grip unwavering. She aimed the weapon at the target at the end and fired, each shot perfectly hitting every mark, the echo ringing in the hall like a drumbeat of inevitability. And she felt the stunned gaze of the other trainees burn into her back as she moved, as if she were the only one who knew the true rhythm of the space. And she sensed that something monumental was about to be revealed. The final obstacle, a simulated breach with multiple targets. She crouched low, her weapon moving with her every instinct, aligning her movements as if guided by unseen hands, and she felt the electricity of anticipation surge through the hall. The silence, so thick it pressed against her skin, and she realized that every drill, every failure, every doubt had been leading to this singular moment, where she would prove her worth to everyone watching, and to herself. She reached the last target, stretched out, and touched it, her heart hammering in her chest, sweat stinging her eyes, and the hall erupted in a tension so sharp it felt like a physical weight. And she turned to see Commander Rourke step closer, his gaze locked on hers, and she sensed that the moment of recognition was about to descend and reveal everything that had been hidden behind months of struggle and doubt. Rourke nodded slowly, his expression unreadable to the other trainees, but filled with understanding, and she felt a shiver run through her as the room seemed to exhale, releasing the tension. And yet the eyes of every person in the hall were glued to the space between them, waiting for the declaration that would cement her transformation. And she knew that the next words or a movement would shift everything in the room forever. The silence stretched long, and Maya held the weapon steady, her chest rising and falling, her pulse echoing in her ears. And the other trainees could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them like a tide, and she realized that she was no longer the girl who had failed every drill. She was something far stronger, someone who had been forged in fire, and the hall waited for the signal that she had finally arrived.